Oh, hello there. Yes, Happy New Year. It is very new. It's getting dark already. It's only about 3:30, mind you. But anyway, Happy New Year. I thought I'd begin the new year making some videos. Because of the way my mind is at the moment, quite a few of them are likely to be about right-wing think tanks. So I warn you now, if you're bored by that subject, well, don't watch it. Yes, originally sort of inspired by a Twitter post from the delightful Professor Frank Furedi, sociology professor, but you'd never guess it, and sort of guiding light behind Spiked magazine. Used to be a Trotskyite. Yeah, how the world changes, eh? Anyway, they do say you get more right wing as you get older. That's a lot, though. Anyway, yes, it's based on the idea that we need a parents' revolt against woke indoctrination in schools. I don't want to unpack the actual document that he's talking about, which comes from Policy Exchange, which is something I've done in previous videos. You can find them below. I might leave a link or two to those, just to sort of debunk this idea of there being this huge surge of woke indoctrination in schools, whereby children are as young as 2 are being told that they're wrong because they're white and they're trans, really, and that Winston Churchill was a horrible man, or all that stuff. All right, don't really want to go there with that one. What I want to look at today is a sort of companion document from the person that produced the report, Eric Kaufman of the Policy Exchange. You can look him up online. Yeah, interesting. Anyway, so this is the politics of culture wars in contemporary Britain. He's based this on another YouGov poll at the same time about diversity training in the workplace. And I just want to sort of pick out some of the language of it to sort of show a kind of direction of travel, and then sort of talk about his recommendations, which are likely to start cropping up, I think, all over the place. So let's dive in with his major findings. Yeah, based on, as I say, about 2,000 people in the UK, predominantly in the private sector, I might add, if you actually look at that kind of data. First up is the British public leans approximately 2-1 against the cultural leftist position across 20 culture wars issues. Which is fine, except I have no idea realistically what that means. The data, the raw data, YouGov posted online, and I'm not really quite sure. This is basically people self-identifying and being asked a series of questions where they also self-identify. Cultural leftist position. Yeah, I think it means left, basically. Around 20 culture war issues. Well, you can guess what most of those are. They'll have the word woke and cancel in them quite a great deal. Okay, so let's move on to the second one. Cancel culture issues split the far left from the centre left, centre and right. Critical race theory themed issues pertaining to heritage and history strongly mobilise the right and centre while fragmenting the left. Yes, except critical race theory themed issues. That's racially themed issues. Okay, you throw in critical race theory because loads of people have heard about it and they assume certain things about it. Over the last 2 years, with things like this being produced and discussed in the right-wing media, it's become taken as read that critical race theory is being taught in British schools. It isn't. Try arguing that one with people, though. They won't have it. They won't have it. A quarter of British people worry about losing their reputation and job due to interpretations of what they may or said have posted online. And this is where Eric gets interesting with the use of the data, because if you think about it, losing your job is very, very different as a concept from losing a bit of reputation. Yeah? If I go to a party and I'm rude to the host, I don't necessarily have to worry it's going to get me fired. Yeah? Well, what he's done is he's used the data to lump those two things together, so therefore we end up with a quarter of the people, because otherwise you end up with almost nobody who's worried about their losing their job, or particularly reputation, but primarily job. So, a bit disingenuous, Eric. Never mind, we'll move on. Diversity training may be limiting black advancement. There is no significant difference between left and right voters' willingness to criticise a black work colleague at around 20 to 25%. But among voters who lean right, diversity training has a significant adverse impact. 38% of right party voters who have taken diversity training say they would feel uncomfortable providing negative feedback to a black work colleague. Okay, but how on earth does that limit black advancement? Any ideas? Because I certainly don't. I can't think how an unwillingness to criticise somebody would mean that it would limit their ability to advance. Don't know. I've had to spend a long period of time this afternoon trying to think my way through that. 54% say the current political climate prevents them saying what they truly believe, rising to 76% for right of centre voters. There have been a number of studies in the last couple of years which the right always jump up and down about with this, whereby they say, oh, well, you see, the majority of people feel uncomfortable sitting next to somebody they hold different views from. Yeah. But it isn't the current political climate, is it? It's just simply the way that people are. And feeling uncomfortable isn't necessarily a particular thing in real terms in the workplace, yeah? This idea that you can't say what you think now was just as true 10 years ago. It's just that it can be used to suggest that we've become more intolerant. Right, by a 51 to 32 margin, people think that Britain should focus on the positives rather than the negatives in its past, and want the balance of pride and shame to be taught to lean 60-40 towards pride. Okay, fine. However, there is no evidence that it doesn't. I think if you open up a standard Key Stage 3 or GCSE history book, or indeed A-level, you wouldn't end up with a anti-British history position. Okay, loads of people vehemently disagree with that. But what they mean is we don't want anything negative being taught. Yeah, we don't want a realistic view of history because, after all, children can't deal with that until they're 25. I don't know, whatever it is. Yeah, we don't actually want that. What we want is for nobody to question whether or not Winston Churchill may have had slight flaws. However, the problem with that, of course, about teaching is that that's not the way that teaching works. As children get older and move into young adulthood, we have to teach them to think for themselves. And that means often presenting two cases, one of which may be negative. Yeah. Was Winston Churchill a great wartime leader? Yes. Did he have flaws? Yes. Can we deal with that? Some adults can't. But that's basically the problem of the adults. That's not magically the teachers inserting ideas in their sweet little heads. Yes. The report recommends, and here we go, these are the recommendations. And as I say, folks, this is where we're going to get to the nuts and bolts of what's going to appear. I think over the next few months we're going to see a lot of this. The report recommends that diversity training in organisations be paused until newer variants can be shown to produce measurable positive outcomes. Right, now, most of you who are in the workplace out there, in any large sort of establishment, will have been through some form of diversity training. You may not have realised it at the time, but you basically have. It's to comply with the law, okay? The 2010 Equality Act is kind of all-encompassing. A lot of people seem to think it's kind of weird pick and mix thing, whereby it's like, yeah, we like the equal pay, but we don't want to talk about black people. Well, that's not the way it works, really, okay? But I don't see, I mean, think your way through this as a recommendation, that diversity training is paused until newer variants, I don't really quite sure what variants that equally meet the law, can be shown to produce measurable positive outcomes. So what's the time frame of that? Because I was, again, thinking this afternoon, that must be like about 7 years, possibly. I don't see how you could produce measurable positive outcomes, particularly without a longitudinal study. And what diversity training would you do, that's different from now, bearing in mind the diversity training that's done now is based on the law? I have no idea, but expect people to be jumping up and down about that one. Right, Here we go, real crunchy one. The report recommends that school history texts not be drawn primarily from critical academic sources. I don't know how you do that at A-level. I don't know how you teach A-level history without drawing primarily from critical academic sources. Because if you're doing history A-level, there's a reasonable chance that you'll be thinking about doing a degree. And I think you need the ability to analyse academic sources critically. Yeah? Or do we just going to... Or does this mean not all schools or not all levels? And the answer is it's too bleeding vague, and I think in many ways it's deliberately couched that way. You see, whenever you hear criticism of the teaching of history in schools, the assumption is always that it's 8-year-olds that are doing it. It's never that they're 17 and a half. Moving on. But should instead emphasise positive national achievements in equal measure. Well, critical academic sources can also involve positive national achievements, can't they? Yeah? If I show you some stamps from 1969, let's say from the Battle of Britain film, okay? I remember them very clearly as a child, being quite enamoured with them. That's a positive national achievement, but it's entirely possible to have a critical academic view of when they came out and the context that they came out with. Because that's one of the things that we need to teach children to do, is to be critical, after all. In equal measure, if not more, than criticism of the national past. This should include elements that celebrate the contribution of people from different backgrounds, such as the Commonwealth soldiers fighting during the World Wars. Well, guys, don't want to shock you, but I think if you look at a lot of the GCSE, especially history curriculum, and certainly various stuff at A-level, you get that anyway. So again, what are we dealing with here? Are people really not celebrating the contribution of that? Yeah, I know Lawrence Fox won't, obviously. I mean, he watched the film 1917, was unhappy with Hindu soldiers there. Sorry, Sikh soldiers, wasn't he? Right, and the report recommends that public workplaces not promote cultural leftist positions. Again, one of those wonderful phrases. What does that mean? Stuff we don't like. Right? Not promote them. Okay, leave that one hanging. These are political ideas, not consensus values. I don't know. Schools are supposed to teach British values. Are they political ideas? The idea of democracy, the rule of law, tolerance? I don't know. Are they consensus values? The government will assure us that they are consensus values. I would argue, as a sociology teacher, that I think they're political ideas at the same time. They can be both. Government should enforce impartiality on these issues across the public sector, including the civil service, NHS and schools. Enforce. What? Do we come up with a new kind of prevent strategy around this? Whereby I will be forced to present a positive view of British history to a 60-40 ratio? Who's going to be counting? I don't understand how on earth that could work. But that's a kind of Section 28 one. That's a kind of Section 28 one. And again, I could see various people pushing for that as a real thing. Yeah? We'll shut down debate by making them worried about what they might say. The report recommends that private workplaces not promote cultural leftist positions. These are political, not moral, which is an odd difference from it being not a consensus value. How are cultural leftist positions not moral? How is an anti-racist position not moral? How is an anti-sexist position not moral? I don't understand that in the slightest, right? Doing so can alienate workers, lead to more brittle interracial interactions, and make it harder to retain talent. Yes. In other words, people might just leave. Well, they might do, but I don't think they probably will. A lot of people that sort of comment on this thing in terms of the right-wing sphere, if I can call it that, will have had to mandatorily undertaken this kind of training. Did they get up and walk out when that was going on? I don't think they did, because it was part of their, contract of employment. Anyway, yeah, I'm thinking that we will see a lot more of this stuff in the next few months. I have the feeling that the government, embattled as it is around a number of issues that it doesn't particularly want to talk about, If you notice, newspapers today were all of the front pages were about Harry and Meghan. There was basically nothing on the NHS. It was just Harry and Meghan, because that's the thing that we need to talk about. I think that the government will pull various things out of the hat in and around these issues. There will be another huge moral panic in and around this, and we will see these various right-wing institutions being wheeled out, like Eric is, to give their recommendations as to what should happen. And oddly enough, it will be more legislation. Okay, that'll be good for me. Anyway, sorry, that was a bit long, a bit rambling. I'll try and make them more pithy next time, but had to kind of get that out of me. Anyway, have a lovely rest of the week. I have to go to work tomorrow. Never mind. It'll be good for me, I'm sure. I'll take a moral position on that one. Have a lovely rest of the day.